June 6, 1997, prom night, a night of laughter, music, and shimmering gowns. Students twirled beneath the glow of the ballroom lights, lost in the magic of their last high school celebration. But, beneath the glitter and excitement, something sinister was lurking just beyond the dance floor. 17-year-old Sarah pushed open the door to the women's restroom, expecting to touch up her makeup, but as she stepped inside, a metallic scent filled her nose, thick, suffocating. Her stomach twisted as her eyes landed on the floor. A dark pool of blood was creeping out from beneath one of the stalls, its deep red tendrils stretching towards her heels. A strangled gasp caught in her throat. Every instinct told her to run. She turned and bolted, breathless as she alerted the school janitor. Minutes later, the janitor arrived, mumbling about drunken mishaps and nosebleeds. But as he moved towards the trash bin, something unsettled him. The garbage bag inside was heavier than it should have been. Far too heavy. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge. Hesitation prickled his skin like needles. He called for another custodian. Together, they hesitantly peeled back the plastic. What they saw made their blood run cold. A newborn baby lay crumpled inside, wrapped in darkness, silent and still. The air seemed to vanish from the room. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, the weight of what they had uncovered crashed down on them. The music in the gymnasium thumped on, oblivious to the horror that had unfolded just feet away. But the nightmare was only beginning. Someone was about to become very popular, but not for being crowned prom queen or winning best dressed. No, their name would be whispered in fear. Their story passed around in hushed tones for years to come, because on this night, beneath the dazzling lights and cheerful laughter, something far more disturbing was about to unfold. Melissa Drexler had mastered the art of concealment. As the moments passed, she swapped her usual outfits for baggy clothes, carefully choosing styles that masked the growing curve of her stomach. She dismissed her unusual cravings as nothing more than a change in appetite, brushing off any questions with a casual shrug. No one at school suspected a thing. Not her classmates, not her teachers, not even the staff who saw her every day. She carried on as if nothing had changed, her secret hidden in plain sight. Even when prom dress shopping with a friend, the truth remained buried. As Melissa slipped into her gown, her friend's eyes lingered on her midsection, noticing the slight roundness beneath the fabric.
Looks like you put on a little weight.
They teased, unaware of just how much weight Melissa was truly carrying, and the horrifying events that would soon be shown. 18-year-old Melissa Drexler knew she was pregnant, whether she wanted to admit it or not. The truth lurked beneath every passing day, every craving, every subtle change in her body. She had met her boyfriend John Lewis, 2 years her senior and already out of high school, through a family friend. Their relationship had its fair share of ups and downs, but like any young couple, they held onto the illusion of love. Yet, as her pregnancy progressed, Melissa kept her secret buried. Not her friends, not her family, no one knew the truth. She carried the weight of it alone, pretending nothing was wrong. At one point, she almost told John. The words sat on the tip of her tongue, a confession waiting to spill. But at the last second, fear took over. She forced a laugh, shook her head, and brushed it off.
I'm not pregnant,
she claimed, and just like that, the secret remained hers alone, until prom night, when the truth would come crashing down in the most horrifying way imaginable. Dressed in their finest, Melissa Drexler, her boyfriend John Lewis, and their friends were ready for prom night, a night meant to be filled with music, laughter, and celebration. But just before they left, a sharp pain twisted through Melissa's body. Her contractions had begun, and soon her water broke. John was unaware of the full truth, assuming she wasn't feeling well, just a bad case of cramps. Determined not to let anything ruin the night, they arrived at the prom as planned. As soon as they arrived at the prom, Melissa excused herself and hurried to the restroom. Inside the stall, panic set in. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she gritted her teeth and began to push. The pain was unbearable, but she remained silent, biting down on her lip to muffle any sound. Outside, other girls in the restroom barely noticed at first. The occasional groan, the soft gasps of pain, it could have been anything. Maybe she had bad period cramps. Maybe a couple had slipped into the stall for something more illicit. But then they saw it, a dark, thick pool of blood creeping across the tile floor. Concern turned to unease. Melissa's friend sensed something was wrong. She hesitated for a moment before approaching the stall and knocking gently.
Melissa?
She called.
Are you okay?
Silence. Melissa's friend pressed her palm against the cool metal of the stall door. The blood on the floor was impossible to ignore now, thick and pooling, its deep red stark against the white tile. Then, from inside the stall, Melissa's voice came, calm, almost too calm.
I'll be done pretty soon. Go tell the boys we'll be right out.
The words sent a shiver down her friend's spine. Something about the way she said it, so casual, so composed, felt wrong. She lingered for a moment, unsure whether to push further, to demand Melissa open the door, but after a pause, she reluctantly stepped back, convincing herself it was just really bad cramps. As she exited the restroom, the muffled sounds of the prom continued outside. Music, laughter, the distant hum of students lost in their own world. Inside the stall, Melissa took a deep breath, steadying herself. She wasn't done yet. Not quite. The fluorescent light in the restroom flickered, casting harsh shadows against the cold tile walls. Melissa gritted her teeth, her nails digging into the metal stall, her entire body racked with agony. A final guttural cry escaped her lips as the baby slipped into the toilet bowl with a sickening splash. For a moment, everything was silent. Then a sound, faint, weak, the newborn, his tiny chest rising and falling, a fragile breath rattling from his lips. His skin, slick and pink, twitched with the first moments of life. Melissa's breath was ragged, her vision swimming, but her hands moved with eerie certainty. She reached up, grabbed the serrated edge of the sanitary napkin dispenser. The jagged metal glinted under the dim light as she brought it down, sawing through the umbilical cord with cold precision. The baby whimpered, a soft, helpless sound. Melissa's hands trembled for only a second. Then, she wrapped her fingers around his delicate throat. She squeezed. Tiny limbs flailed, a desperate gasping struggle. The air filled with wet squelch of flesh pressing into flesh. The feeble resistance of a newborn against the inevitable. Seconds stretched into eternity, until finally, silence. The world was quiet again. Melissa exhaled, shivering. No time to hesitate, no time to think. She grabbed the body, its warmth fading, and wrapped it in layers of garbage bags, twisting them tightly, sealing away the horror. With steady hands, she pushed the bundle deep into the bathroom trash bin, pressing it down beneath soiled papers and discarded tampons. She stood breathless, staring at herself in the mirror. Blood streaked her thighs, her hands. Her face was pale, hollow, but not horrified, not afraid. With slow, deliberate movements, she cleaned herself up, fixing her makeup, smoothing her dress until she looked perfect once more. Then, Melissa stepped out of the restroom, the distant thump of prom music welcoming her back. The dance floor pulsed with laughter, the glow of lights casting a dreamlike haze over the oblivious students. Melissa swayed to the rhythm, her lips curling into a smile as she rejoined her friends. No one suspected a thing, and somewhere beneath the layers of trash, the tiny body lay still, swallowed by the darkness. Melissa returned to her table with an eerie calm, as if nothing had happened. She casually picked up her salad and began to eat, the crisp greens almost mechanical in her mouth, her eyes scanning the room as though she were just another prom goer, enjoying the night. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as she chewed and swallowed, trying to force the memory of what had just transpired into some distant corner of her mind. She even danced, just one dance, but she moved as though on autopilot. The music thumped around her. The flashing lights above pulsed, and for a brief moment it almost seemed like everything was normal again. The laughter of her friends, the chatter, the joy, it all seemed so far removed from the reality she had just created, but that illusion wouldn't last. Moments after Melissa had rejoined the dance floor, the flashing lights of an ambulance broke through the night. Paramedics rushed to the restroom. They found the baby, cold, lifeless, and unresponsive. Despite their frantic attempt at CPR, the newborn's tiny chest refused to rise. The baby was dead. Back at prom, the air filled with thick confusion as one of the teachers pulled Melissa aside, her gaze sharp, filled with concern.
Melissa,
She gently asked.
were you pregnant?
For a moment, time seemed to stretch. Melissa's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to swallow the truth, but the weight of it crushed her.
No,
She lied, shaking her head.
it's just a heavy period.
The teacher didn't buy it. Her face hardened as she gave Melissa a long, penetrated look. As the realization dawned that the baby's body had been found, Melissa's last defense shattered, and in that moment, she confessed. The truth spilled out like something darker, heavier than she could bear. The teacher led her away, and soon paramedics and law enforcement took over. Melissa was rushed to the hospital where she was treated. While she lay in the sterile hospital room, numb and trembling, the principal quietly ushered John into a secluded room, away from the prying eyes and muted chatter of the event. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, each moment stretching into an eternity. Then, in a voice that was both measured and chilling, the principal said,
John, your girlfriend just had a baby.
For a heartbeat, the room was silent, John's mind struggling to process the words, his heart pounding in disbelief. With a trembling whisper, barely audible over the pounding in his ears, he managed to ask,
What are you talking about?
In the stark, claustrophobic moment, the truth began to unfurl like a dark tapestry, one woven with horror and unimaginable sorrow, shattering the fragile illusion of the night. Word spread quickly, and Melissa's parents were notified. The gravity of the situation seemed to hit them all at once as they rushed to the hospital. The autopsy report confirmed what everyone feared. The baby had been born alive, had gasped for breath in those first moments, only to be strangled to death by the hands of his own mother. Melissa's son was named Christopher by her parents, a small, heartbreaking tribute to the child she had taken from this world. Christopher was buried in a quiet, private ceremony. The family held onto his birth and death certificates, cold, official reminders of tragedy that no one could ever erase. The nightmare, however, would never truly leave Melissa. Her life, like the empty space where her son's life should have been, would be forever haunted by the darkness of what she had done. Melissa Drexler was a calm and reserved young woman, rarely revealing much of her inner world. Her emotions were conveyed through simple expressions, a smile here, a frown there. To those around her, she appeared steady and composed, never overly enthusiastic, but never withdrawn either. Her friends saw her as sensitive and compassionate, always there to listen when someone needed to talk, offering a quiet form of support. She didn't fit in with the popular crowd at Lacey Township High School, instead gravitating towards her boyfriend, John Lewis, and a small group of close friends who understood her better than anyone else. One of those friends had been by Melissa's side since 4th grade. The two were inseparable, their friendship growing stronger over the years. They spent weekends together, confiding in one another and sharing everything from secrets to dreams. Rebecca, as she was known, was passionate about ballet, with its graceful, flowing movements. Melissa, however, found herself drawn to jazz, with its faster tempo and energetic rhythms. But as high school began, their interests changed. Dancing gave way to shopping for the latest jeans and t-shirts. They could often be found at the Ocean County Mall in Toms River, searching for the perfect outfits. Their days were filled with outings to the bowling alley, painting their nails, and occasionally strolling along the boardwalk in Seaside Park. At night, they'd sit around Rebecca's kitchen table, chatting and laughing about life's little moments, feeling like any other group of teenage girls enjoying their carefree years. Yet, behind Melissa's quiet demeanor, there were hidden layers that no one, not even her closest friends, truly saw. A secret life was unfolding, a life that would soon unravel in a way no one could have predicted, shaking the very foundation of a town she called home. It was this overwhelming sense of horror and disbelief that had gripped the residents of the small, quiet town of 23,000, a place where teenagers were more often found behind counters in local stores than loitering on the streets. The news of Melissa Drexler's actions had cast an unsettling shadow across the community. People who once shared pleasantries and familiar smiles now found their conversations clouded with unease. Fear lingered in the air like an invisible fog that no one could shake off. Ambiguity ruled the town. Some defended Melissa while others condemned her for actions so incompromisable it felt like a waking nightmare. Yet, no matter the stance, the predominant emotion was shock. How could something so grim happen in their peaceful suburban town? How could innocence unravel into such darkness without warning? The once tranquil streets known for their lazy Sunday mornings and hushed whispers of suburban life had been invaded by reporters and television cameras. The flashing lights and microphones turned the town into a circus of prying eyes, a spectacle that many residents found repugnant and invasive. Some withdrew in disgust, unwilling to be a part of the media frenzy that had become impossible to ignore. The Drexlers, once a picture of ordinary, hard-working values in the town, were no longer shielded from the ugliness of public scrutiny. Bewildered and lost in the whirlwind of events, they were forced to confront a nightmare they never anticipated. The parents, once proud of their daughter's achievements, now found themselves stumbling through a waking terror, trapped in a reality where they couldn't understand how their world had shifted so violently. In the stunned silence of their everyday lives, they had become the heart of a tragedy so unfathomable that both their town and the world beyond would forever struggle to come to terms with what had been set in motion. In Monmouth County, prosecutors initially charged Melissa Drexler with murder, but on October 29, 1998, she pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter, a charge that brought a sense of finality to a case that had shaken the community to its core. In a somber courtroom, Melissa stood and read a statement, her voice steady but laden with an undeniable weight of guilt and sorrow. The words she spoke echoed in the minds of those who heard them. "I knew I was pregnant. I concealed the pregnancy from everyone. On the morning of the prom, my water broke. While I was in the car on the way to prom, I began to have cramps. I went to the prom and I went into the bathroom and I delivered the baby. The baby was born alive. I knowingly took the baby out of the toilet and wrapped a series of garbage bags around the baby. I then placed the baby in another garbage bag, knotted it closed and threw it in the trash can. I was aware of what I was doing at the time when I placed the baby in the bag, and I was further aware that what I did would most certainly result in the death of the baby." Her words, stark and direct, left little room for ambiguity. The truth of what had occurred that night was now laid bare in the courtroom, forever altering the lives of those involved, and marking the end of a tragic chapter for a young woman who had once seemed so ordinary. The judge, having considered the details of the case and her guilty plea, sentenced Melissa to 15 years in prison for killing her newborn son shortly after delivering him in the bathroom at her senior prom. As the sentence was read, Melissa's body trembled with emotion, her remorse palpable. She had at that moment come to terms with the weight of the irreversible choice she had made that night, a decision that had not only taken a life but irrevocably changed her own. Released from prison in November 2001 at the age of 23, Melissa Drexler returned home to live with her parents, beginning the process of rebuilding her life after serving a portion of her 15-year sentence. During her time in prison, she was noted as a model inmate. She enrolled in fashion courses while incarcerated, a pursuit she hoped would open new opportunities for her once she was released. Since her release, Melissa has moved forward with her life. She married and has since had 2 children of her own, a life far removed from the events of her past, though they remain a shadow that will always follow her. The story of Melissa Drexler is a tragic example of how stigma surrounding teenage pregnancy, combined with a lack of support or open communication, can have devastating consequences. Many young women like Melissa may feel isolated, afraid, or pressured to hide their pregnancies due to fear of judgment or shame. If there had been a more supportive environment, whether through stronger parental relationship, better communications, or accessible resources, it's possible that the outcome could have been different. A more positive approach to unplanned pregnancies often involves creating spaces where young women feel empowered to speak openly, to seek help, and to make informed decisions without fear of condemnation. Open dialogue, understanding, and access to support can make all the difference in helping them navigate such a challenging situation in a healthier, safer way. The focus should be on providing guidance, empathy, and options rather than perpetuating shame.